Hi everyone and welcome back to the Paperless Movement YouTube channel. I cannot wait to start this interview today with Amir. We will deep dive into Todoist, but also we will talk a lot about different all-in-one solutions, as they are called, like Notion and Evernote, ClickUp, and the advantages and disadvantages with these tools. That's a pretty polarizing interview, I would say. There might be a lot of things we say that those Notion lovers don't like to hear, but this is my personal view that I have on these things, and also from Amir, he's talking about this, and I think we hit a nerve there. And I think companies like Notion and ClickUp, they can take this feedback to actually improve their tool into the right direction. I think there's not much more to mention before we get started. I just want to say this video is sponsored by, no, not any company. As usual, this sponsored is by you, my Inner Circle members. That helps me to stay unbiased on my videos, and I think that's a really important thing, especially when we need to change our mindset to actually leverage the digital world instead of just living in it. But without further ado, let's dive into it. Alright everyone, I can't wait to talk to Amir today, but he's actually the CEO of Todoist, one of my beloved productivity apps that I use on a daily basis, that I recommend to all of my Inner Circle members when it comes to personal task management. And we will also talk about the difference between personal task management and project management, team management, and all these. And we will also dive into tools like Notion and Evernote and things like this, and ClickUp, you know, who claim to be the all-in-one solution. I'm really excited to get into this. But without further ado, let's dive into it. Amir, welcome to the show. Maybe you tell us who you are and what you do at Todoist. Haha. You're the founder as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
So,
well,
good.
My name is Amir Salihefendic, and I founded Todoist actually as a personal tool back in 2007. I really made it for myself, and I'm still probably a very passionate user. Yeah, I have probably used it for the last maybe 13, 14 years now, every day. So
hey, okay.
So
it's always good when the employees and actually the founder of some companies actually use their own tools. That's always a good sign.
Yeah. And for me, it's not really so much it was never really a business plan.
Yeah.
It wasn't I can make money of this. It's more I have this problem. I really need to get it solved.
Yeah.
And I really like how other apps solve this problem.
Yeah.
And it's a very, very, like you said, you'd work deeply into this field, that it's a very hard problem, and there's many different nuances of solutions and even the problem you're solving. Yeah. So that's something we have done for the last 13 or something years, and I'm still very passionate about this. I wake up and I'm very excited to actually go in and work on this, and I don't think we have still solved it yet. We are closer, but we still need to do some more stuff here.
So what is it specific that you want to solve? Because you solved already a lot of problems on my side. So what else do you want to get to?
Yeah, I mean, I think Todoist, any other apps, especially in the productivity field, it's still kind of niche. Of course, niche. We do have millions of users using us, but it's still niche on the world plan.
Yeah.
So nobody has really created a solution that's the best. You see this with Zoom. Zoom, has a lot of traction, and same with
But also a lot of problems. That's really the thing. So yeah, and I think and you just dive into the right direction here. What worried me a bit about Todoist was the release of boards, and that I worried you want to go more and more in the direction of team management and project management. Obviously, from a business point of view, that makes absolutely sense, but don't you lose focus on the personal task management and the integration, and you evolve into more like an all-in-one solution, which we dive deeper in why this might be a problem?
Yeah. I mean, we have been hesitant to actually do this for a long time. because like it's really, really hard to actually make something that appeals to like the personal like user and like the team user. This said, I think we have found a way to do this without actually making the like single user experience more complex.
Yeah.
So that's something like that we really care deeply about. Like for instance, a lot of the other apps on the market, like Asana, ClickUp, even Notion, they are really like focused on the team. We are focused on the individual.
Okay, that's still your focus. That's what I wanted to hear. That.
Yeah. But this said, like we also want to support better like collaboration, like team usage, because a lot of people also want to use Todoist for that. And currently, like right now, it's not really a great tool. Yeah. So, like I hope we are not like going to end up in a situation where we kind of don't like serve the individual user or serve the team, and then like end up in like a worst case scenario.
Yeah, you serve neither in the end then. Yeah. And I just had the talk to the CEO of Raven Scanner, and they use Todoist for managing their highly productive and efficient team there. They're pushing out one feature after the other. So obviously there is need there, or actually Todoist is useful as a team management tool. And also I talked to Carl Pulin, who is a dedicated Todoist user, and I think you know him as well. And he said how he uses the boards feature, and that also gave me a different perspective on this tool. So you just said it right. You implemented it in a way that it didn't change my existing workflow. And I can think about, should I use it or shouldn't I use it? So that's a nice way to implement things. And talking about Carl Pulin, we also talked about the recent releases from Evernote and the way how they did the releases by taking away features and bringing them back now and things like that. And we also mentioned Todoist here because you had a similar extreme change on the back end, isn't it, when it comes to Todoist, but it was much more smooth. Maybe you can just give us a walkthrough there and what Evernote actually could learn from this.
Yeah, I mean, something to know is like we have had our own Evernote moments, but I think they have been much less severe because we didn't remove something that a lot of people care about. So when we actually do like kill stuff off, it's basically because like few percentage of people use them, and it kind of adds a lot of complexity that we don't want to maintain. So, and we have also like Evernote like done like system level, like model level changes, like today's foundations that we released like maybe a year and a half ago or something like that was a like huge change on the model levels. And most users actually didn't really notice this because like,
that's what I mean.
Continued to work and it looked the same. So for people, it was like you haven't changed anything for a long time. Like, like get working. Like,
but was it? Yeah, it was a fundamental improvement on the back end of Todoist, isn't it? So you can further improve things on the front end. So
exactly. And we are actually still doing one change. Like currently, we're doing a massive change on the back end again to enable like collaboration, like much better collaboration.
Okay.
But again, like most users will actually not really see this. But the systems will just become much more robust. I mean, for instance, like one of the also big changes that we introduced is basically linking. So you will be able to link to any object inside the system using just one URL. Like right now, so like, we solve the collaboration, but we also make the system much better for everybody else. Like if you want to link to a specific comment, you will be able to do that or anything else that you want inside the system.
Oh, that's really nice. I'm mentioning this so many times, tools coming up like Roam Research and now Notion implemented backlinking and all this. But I always keep saying from a technical point of view, it's not that complicated. It's just, I think, there's no magic behind it implementing this, but we have to get customers to the point or users to the point to understand how they can leverage such integrations and how we actually can improve the productivity systems to make it more efficient using these type of cross-linking, backlinks and all this. Any thoughts on this when we talk about Roam Research and things like that, coming to backlinks?
Yeah, I mean, they are very powerful concept. Like maybe there could also be a powerful concept in like task management space. Like if you have like, like references between tasks, like there's not many actually systems that enable this. And I think even like in the like knowledge space, like, Notion and Rome, they have also just like recently introduced that. Maybe like Rome had it from the beginning, but it's kind of a new concept. And I think it's a very interesting one because you basically build kind of like graph and you connect stuff much better with each other. So like we're actually looking to add, like we're actually adding this to Twist, which is our team communication app. And basically I think it's a really powerful concept, like because there we kind of connect conversations with each other. So you can basically like take a deep dive, you get a reference to a thread, and then you can kind of like see how it's connected to every other discussion that your team or company has. And maybe like for task management, it could also make sense. Like it's not something we have explored deeply, but I think it could be really interesting to kind of take a deep dive on that.
Yeah, that will be really interesting. I mean, looking at Slack, for example, these are all these names we know and we also use nowadays. But as you said, people started to create these things and build solutions. But if they're really the top-notch solutions, I doubt this. We have Zoom and we have Slack and we have Notion and so on. And what we see coming up is concepts and courses building around these tools. So for example, we see courses around Notion, how you can manage your whole life inside Notion, and you can do project management and all this. And I just recently, if you're one of my Inner Circle members, there will be a vlog actually where I'm discussing with one of my team members if we should switch completely from ClickUp to Notion. And I just, said, no way. I try to implement these. And if I need so much time implementing project management systems and then workarounds to get like task dependencies and all this is not an efficient tool for me. It's an all-in-one solution, but is it efficient? Only in certain parts, like, for example, knowledge management. And so this is the reason why I'm coming from a different perspective on these whole things. And my Inner Circle members learn something called ICOR framework. So it's about input, control, output, refine. And these different parts, we will look at tools that fit these parts. So for example, Notion would be in the control part for knowledge management. And Todoist will be in the output part for actually getting things done. But I'm not using Todoist to keep things reminding or, a knowledge database or wikis or things like that. But I'm much more efficient doing it this way, this combination of tools, instead of using one tool for everything. So, long talk here. But why, for Todoist, it is so good integrated in so many different tools. When I look at Gmail integration, Google Calendar integration, and the Open API, Plixi we had on the show as well, where we can connect Todoist with Asana and so on. Was this something that you had in mind from the beginning onwards? Or you already mentioned that it was never your goal to build an all-in-one solution. So you're all about API, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think, from today's perspective, like we have had integrations since the early beginning. So actually, like one of the first things I did, like even as a personal project, was like create extensions for like Firefox, and then later on Chrome, and then later on like Gmail and stuff like that. So this has been like a huge part. And even the API, like, like Notion, for instance, has still not launched their API. And we've had like API for the last 10 years, since the beginning. So I think like, integrations and like building a platform and integrating well with others, like this is like such a key component of Todoist. And I think also like some of our success, because you can basically plug it in. You can also like automate it with a lot of like, Zapier or Plexi or whatever else like automation tool you use. And you can build some really incredibly complex stuff using that. And I think like this Notion, like you kind of like added this like all-in-one tools. I mean, from our perspective, and we have actually looked at this because like when we looked at like team communication space, like we have our own tool called Twist for that. We could have also just like added team communication to Todoist, or like created a new product that kind of introduced team communication and like organizational or team organization or personal organization. But the problem is like once you actually look at this, like the problem space is like huge, and the solution that you come up with is basically something that like you need to kind of have like a PhD to figure out how to use.
Yeah.
Or you need to like do many compromises. Like for instance, Basecamp is a great example where you kind of have like everything in there is kind of mediocre. Nothing is like best in class. So you have like something, yeah, like, but it's basically just like super basic. And what we believe in is kind of like to have like the best of breed products, or best in class. So you can have like best in class, task management, or like best in class knowledge sharing, and then you integrate them together. So that's basically our way. And honestly, like for us, like what we actually want to end up with in the future is basically have our own stack. So we really also want to solve actually like note taking or knowledge sharing in our own way, like specialized, and same with team communication. So that's kind of like our all-in-one solution will kind of be a suite of products that integrate well with each other. It won't be just one solution.
That's a really nice approach, and that sounds like there's a new tool on the horizon for Todoist. Mentioned it.
We haven't started this yet, but I think
okay, I will be your first customer. Don't worry about that. I'm checking this out. Let's just keep it this way. I don't want to, push you in this direction. However, I like the approach here. On one end, you want to have one stack of things where you can ensure that everything works together properly. Because when you open up APIs and all this, it always relies on the stability of the API and the other tool that's using it and so on. So here you can really ensure quality. However, I also like that you still have open API or connections there, because then I can choose certain things from your stack and still use my already 10 years project management system that I'm already using. So I think this is really the future, and this is really how so many companies should change their mindset. And when it comes to Notion, that was the thing that I always wondered about, was there's no API and why they do so long around. And it just makes me wonder if the backend has some issues that they run into a situation with the framework, that the implementing API might be really a problem. And when they open the API, what do we get? Zapier integration. So this is not a stable thing again. So if they release it, I really expect something awesome. And when I look at ClickUp, a very young company, they try to be an all-in-one solution. And I thought, oh my God, another all-in-one solution. Yeah. But they tick a lot of boxes. And for me, I'm all about, and that's the refined part in ICOR, I'm all about automating things. And ClickUp has already embedded their own automations without API and so on. So I can set it up in there. Is this anything on your roadmap as well, that you allow automations inside Todoist and you provide these functionalities?
Yeah, I mean, we would love to do that. Like, it's not something that's like on the short time horizon, but I will definitely like do that at some point. And honestly, like I think like for us, what we would want to do is maybe like make it possible to script. So basically, like you can run like random scripts. I think like probably the best example could be like the spreadsheet scripting that probably like from it can become very powerful. And like we think maybe we can also do something here where you basically have like a simple language, for instance, Lua, where you can basically like enable scripting. So of course, like you can do like automation, based on UI as well. But like if you can actually script stuff, then it becomes like really, really powerful what you can do. Yeah. And maybe you can kind of also like make it possible to share these like between users or like organizations or whatever. So they can kind of become like an ecosystem. Like my background is kind of development. So like we do have some editors like Vim or like Visual Studio Code or Emacs that actually have these extension systems where like the core stays very simple, but then you kind of like build all kind of like tools around that and like plugins. So that's something that could be really, really exciting. So it's not only like these, like super simple like automations, but you can like build extensions.
That sounds
like,
interesting. And, in the end, if somebody wants to automate things, they still can use Zapier and all this and automate things this way. But as it is very specific for personal task management, from my point of view still, there's not much need for me to have these automations in place. I have already recurring tasks and things like this. And, looking at Notion again, where is the recurring task? And so this is not something we dive deeper now. But Todoist, I always have to laugh when I read something about Todoist on Twitter and so on, where you say, we will work on to make it more robust now. Do you know why? Because for me, it is the most robust, or the most robust tool I ever used. So Todoist never failed when I used it, and I'm using it since 5 years now, I think. Is it 5 years? And, this is compared to other tools. It had never any downtimes. It was always available. And so when you say you want to improve speed or robustness and things like this, yeah, I can't think is improving this. And that's just an honest output here, or input for you. So,
well, Tom, I'm happy to hear that. The thing to know is like, the most critical people that we know are ourselves.
Yeah.
So like, like we're never happy with the status quo.
Oh, believe me, I'm a very critical person as well. If people follow my channel, they know how hard I give, what hard time I give those CEOs on these interviews. But yeah, that's just something positive needs to be mentioned as well, I think.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. This said, like, I think still we have like a long way to go here. Yeah, so, and we are making like strides into this. I don't think like we have like a huge issue. It's just like, if you really want to build amazing things, you kind of need to have great foundations.
Yeah.
So, and like these foundations, they need to be like on all levels, like inside and outside. Like it's kind of like a car, if you look at a Porsche, like it's not only like beautiful on the outside, like the engine also needs to be good, and like the whole system needs to kind of work together. And I think like a lot of, including like Todoist, like, and even like, for instance, Evernote is a great example. It's kind of like, there's a lot of legacy code that's kind of very crappy and that you need to replace. So it's basically like having, a car that maybe has like some really fast parts, but then like the engine is kind of crappy, and you can't really succeed without having like even build something for the long term with like a broken engine, or like something that's almost broken. So for us, it's not really on the level that it's kind of like fully broken. It's just not, like if you open the hood, it's not something say like, yeah, this is really beautiful, like this will work 10 years from now.
Yeah, you're working future oriented, so you're optimizing in the back end in the while you're in the comfort zone, and that's something I like. So you think we need to be up to speed and things like that in a few years ahead, and that's how it feels. That's what you also mentioned. The users never actually realize this, and we all know the saying, never change a running system. And all the changes you did, it never felt like that you're changing my running system. And this over years and years since, it is there. And also the input, when I write down, I am always surprised when I'm using different tools, and I'm reviewing a lot of tools, how easy it is to create tasks. It is just the most easy thing I can do on any device I am. No matter where, iOS, it feels the same thing. Something Evernote wants to achieve now, this harmonized feeling of the apps. I think Todoist has it already. And but we have to mention, one reason is that it is a very specific problem that you solve, and that makes it easier to make it harmonized on all the different tools. And when you have a multi-complex thing like ClickUp or all the other tools, it makes it much more complicated to be consistent on all the different platforms, isn't it?
Yeah.
So from the developer perspective now, I mean.
I guess like you end up in a stage like Basecamp where you're kind of you're not really great at anything, and that's a problem. Yeah. Like, it's basically like trying to buy a car that's like a truck and like a racing car.
Yeah.
Like,
like, yeah. Well, there is such thing out there, but
yeah. And I think that's kind of like that aspect. So in the end, like, I mean, if I look at like ClickUp, like I'm just like, I would never use this myself. And same like with Monday.com, like it just, and then they keep adding stuff. Like, it's not like they stop and say, okay, like, maybe we should just like be opinionated here. No, let's add more stuff.
Yeah.
So in the end,
well,
like,
he has Seb has a different approach there. He has the saying, he mentioned it in an interview as well. They rather put out a lot of stuff and figure it out later on if it works, how they can optimize and if it should kept. But as I say, I'm pretty surprised about the quality they put out. Yes, they have some flaws and sometimes you have performance in the issues and all this. But maybe I have different expectations on ClickUp than I would have on a tool like Todoist, which is longer around already. But I absolutely agree. You really come into trouble when, like Notion, you want to serve them all, and then you end up with a few percentage of any area of productivity, knowledge management, and so on of users. So when you then decide, okay, cut it off, we just focus now on knowledge management, you will lose a lot of people anyway, because you never had a lot of people for one piece of tasks in the first place, isn't it?
And Tom, something to note as well is like, it's actually much easier to add features than it is to remove them.
Yeah, that's
like, especially like if you look on the long time frame, and that's something like we are very like opinionated about, is like, we don't add like boards, it has been discussed for years at Todoist before we actually added them. Because we knew like once you add them, like there's no like one day saying, okay, like we are going to remove boards, because then you have like pitchforks at your doorstep.
Then it might be the situation that you come to my interview and they say, why did you remove these boards? It was the first thing that I loved on Todoist. Very well thought through here. I just like the discussion and the tool behind this, and maybe I sound now to my community like a fanboy. But if people follow me, they know exactly the reasons why I'm using Todoist. And there's the other tool called Things 3 that people also love, and where I think this is also a very high quality task manager. But it is very limited on Apple only. And this is the reason why I'm using Todoist. I'm on Windows and PC and Windows and Mac. So I needed to have it on all the places. And also when it comes to integration and things like that. So yeah, there's not much I can add here.
Could I add just a comment? Like,
of course.
I'm usually like very, critical of products in general.
Yeah.
But I think actually Things 3 or like Culture Code, they are actually really, really good at like, product building. Like for instance, for me, like it makes a lot more sense, like quality wise, than something like Notion or Basecamp even. Or ClickUp. So, like when I look at like companies I'm inspired by or products I'm inspired, I think Things 3 is definitely there. Like all the little details, like everything is kind of thought true. I think like where they kind of fail is kind of like the general, product strategy, like, like being limited to the Apple ecosystem, not having an API, not being like, this is like very, very oriented like towards like old school thinking, and I think like this works for them, and they still have like a lot of
they have their niche for people who really live in the Apple universe, and I think it's a good solution there, and they leverage more the OS they are living in, isn't it? Because they can use more features on their end. But it's funny that you agree that they actually got a robust app there, and the point of view, because it actually feels the same way. It is kind of feeling, and that's UI, UX, and many people just miss out. When I look at ClickUp, UX and UI is still, let's face it, it's a mess. You have to learn how to use it and where to find things to click and things like that. They improved over the time, but it is, and in Notion, you have to build up everything on your own to find stuff properly. So, that's a lot of ranting here, but I think looking at the user and asking more questions for the user, how they actually use it, or watching them using it, something like that, would generally help. So let's look at something like Airtable. Any thoughts on that? Because that's more like a knowledge management system only for knowledge management. Okay, a lot of Airtable users will say, oh no, it's a task manager, project manager, and all that. But
yeah. I mean, I think like there's some stuff happening on that front, and you also see a lot of like tools actually converging towards the same paradigm. So like Trello is also like introducing tables. You have like Asana that's also like moved very much into like the Airtable space, and even like something like Todoist, like it's also not really unquestionable that we will also do that at some point. I think it's very interesting.
So what do you mean like, by moving into the Airtable space?
I mean, it's kind of like, having like a table view as well.
In general,
so just like having different views, like you have a board view, list view, table view. And we haven't really committed to this, but like maybe in 10 years, I can imagine like someday we will say, okay, we need a table view as well.
I don't think so.
This space,
Please don't introduce tables. Why? I see already the people ripping me apart in the comments below. But that's my personal opinion.
I think it's a very interesting space. And the problem I have is kind of like it's really more like spreadsheet 2.0 than a really task management or project management solution. Of course, like you can do like spreadsheet, spreadsheets can almost solve any problem that you have, it's it's not really
that's
nice.
The fun thing, when I see something like in my day job, we had to use Smartsheet as well. And all these solutions there, it ends up with a database in the backend. And it is just visualized in a different way. And then, people claim, okay, in Airtable, you have an app out of this and things like that. Yeah, okay, but it has to work in the end. If nobody teaches the people how to set up your, I see it so many times when I coach my inner circle members, we start with their workflows on paper before they go paperless. And usually it is, or actually the issue is already there. They never had a workflow in place and was never efficient at all. And once you realize what workflow do you want to have, then you can look for the right tool, because yes, there's a solution for everything out there. That's why I think tools like Todoist are much easier to incorporate into existing productivity systems, because I can say, okay, you want to become more efficient in your personal task management inside your team, then you could use Todoist and connect it via Plixi with Asana and things like that, because we all want to have a single source of truth. And as I always say, a task list is infinite and a calendar is finite. So that's why I like the two-way connection to the Google Calendar and things like that. So a lot of boxes ticked there. But talking about the two-way connection to the Google Calendar, I talked with Seb Evans of ClickUp about their two-way connection to the Google Calendar. And actually, besides Todoist, they're the only ones providing this integration. And now they are about to release an update to this two-way sync where they actually introduce different colors for different tasks and also tick boxes in front of my Google Calendar events. So I actually can see, instead of deleting them, can see that I finished this task already. And that's something I want to know if you looking into this as well, improving the two-way connection.
It's something we are working on, but honestly, like I don't think this is the right abstraction layer.
Okay.
So like we will probably do something else at some point, because like currently, like the honest thing is like, yeah, we support this, but it's kind of like a huge hack fest.
Okay.
It's not an abstraction that we actually want to have like millions users using, because it's just like, it's very inefficient. Like Google Calendar, like their APIs and models are a freaking mess. Like, that's a company that's never cleaned up their their act.
Yeah, they started with a search engine. What do you expect? So they grew from there. Maybe they have to change their backend at some point.
They have just like kind of like built hack on hack, and then the fundamental problem for us is kind of like that our model isn't the same as their model. So like Todoist isn't a calendar app.
Yeah.
And even if you are a calendar app, like you have many different formats, many different features, like Outlook and Google Calendar, like aren't really the same on like the model level. So it's basically like, you end up in some kind of like inconsistent state. Like maybe this is not really affecting like most users, but even if you have 1 million users using this, if you have 10%, it's still a lot of people that have like buggy experiences.
But the thing is, how do you want to solve this? Because the reason for this two-way synchronization, why it is so important, is that many companies use Google Workspaces now, isn't it? And Google Calendar. So I have my work calendar there. People sign up for meetings and all this. And when I want to get my task done, then I integrate this into my calendar and block out these times. And I don't want to end up tracking my task on two ways. So I have to track it on Todoist, but also block out my time to work on these tasks. So this is why I like this two-way synchronization, automatically blocking for others in my company meeting time. And how do you want to solve this if you don't have a two-way synchronization for Google Calendar? And, with Outlook, they already have the issue that's not possible. But how?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very, very difficult challenge. And honestly, like we don't have like a full picture of how we want to solve this yet. The thing we want is basically like have a better abstraction. So that's like, you will still have two-way sync, but it will not be like the hack fest that we have right now. It will be much more like abstracted. And we also want to kind of like integrate with other calendars as well. So like, Apple Calendar or like Outlook Calendar.
So is it in theory possible to integrate with these calendars, two-way sync?
I mean, I think like on some level it is, but the problem is like really a lot of these systems are very, very old and they are very dirty, and they, it's kind of like, it's really a fight to kind of, it's not like modern, APIs where you can kind of go in and do stuff.
Yeah.
It's more like, like doing coding like 20 or 30 years ago, where you kind of need to fight with these systems.
But that's a real issue, isn't it? As time is really the most precious thing and the limited resource we have over the time. And we are forced to be in our day job and use a different calendar that we use in our private life and so on. And we always end up with black patterns where we don't see the other tool if we don't integrate it properly and all this. So shouldn't it be a main focus for all these productivity tools to enable us to, I don't know, to make a standardized time scheduling API that connects all the calendars no matter what? Does it make sense?
It does, and that would be wonderful. Yeah, I just don't think like the incentive is there for instance for Microsoft, because they have their own ecosystem. They have like all the tools, done in house. Like their maybe motivation isn't really to integrate with others, and same with Google.
Yeah,
and same maybe with Apple as well. So you basically have like the top 3 providers. Like their incentive isn't really to kind of do this. Like their incentive is that you use like all Microsoft tools.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't
and then like things work magically. But like the problem is really that it's really hard to kind of like use these tools from our side. Yeah.
So we're building up monopoles there.
I
think there was a discussion going on in USA about this, isn't it? All of them had to talk about this issue. And when we look at this, especially Google, with their ultimate goal to make the world better and things like that, we should think outside the box, and we could go much further and faster if we all work together and open up things and share resources. I mean, that's the globalization. We see how fast everything goes since we started to share information and all this, isn't it? So yeah, as long they are by building their own aisles, I think it's restricting everybody.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, this said, they do have some APIs. I mean, the problem, like for these huge corporations, though, is like they don't really care deeply about a lot of this stuff. Like, I mean, if you see like Gmail is a great example. It's basically like a graveyard, whatever done to it. Like that's the basic conclusion you can have, and you have like over 1 billion people using that.
Yeah.
And I think like it would have been much better served if you actually had like a private company, a small company, actually just like being only focused on email, and then being on a like open API as well and stuff like that. Because all of this stuff, like it's, I mean, the quality just isn't there, and like there's so many people that also depend on this, and it's also so like these are suites that corporations or teams use as well.
Yeah.
So it's also very hard for people to actually move away from like Microsoft or Google, and then they're kind of stuck with these like really like bad tools in a lot of these spaces. Of course, they also have like great tools as well in these stacks, but most of them aren't really like world class, I think.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And just recently made a quick review about the new Google Tables. It's called Tables. So did you see that? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I've only seen the landing page. Yeah, but yeah, it's basically AirTable.
It's another spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see what they come up with there. Any other tools that you use besides Todoist and Twist?
I mean, we do use like some like specific tools for like different things. Like Figma is an amazing like design tool.
Yeah.
It's really like incredible what they have built using a browser, browser technology. I think it almost like feels like more native than like native apps. Which like technically is very impressive. Then we also use like GitHub. I think like Git is probably like one of the biggest advancements for like humankind in the last, I don't know, maybe like especially like software wise. I think it's very underappreciated, like the whole model. And it enables like some incredible like stuff on like development, like on code. But I think it's also like text. We use it actually to manage our handbook. So I think like some of these paradigms, I'm pretty sure we will actually see them translated over to like, like managing documents. Because I mean, honestly, like something like Word or Google Docs or Notion, like collaborating on a document there is just like wild west in terms of like how you do that. Like if you see how we actually collaborate on code, like doing the pull requests, you have branches, you merge stuff together, you have a very clean like history and log, and then you look at how we manage documents. Like Notion maybe is a great example of like, or even Evernote. I mean, it's very, very primitive, especially like in a collaborative space, and especially like for some like maybe more like permanent knowledge, where you actually do want to have a log, and you actually do want to have review process. So like not anybody inside a company can go in just like edit anything. Yeah,
I absolutely agree. And it's funny, I think it was on Reddit where somebody just mentioned, why using Notion? Why don't you use GitHub to build up your knowledge management system? So, and I created the digital journal designer with my partner and developer. He's a professional developer as well and using Git and all this. And I learned a lot about these different advantages in there and how we work together when it came to coding and rolling back versions and things like that. So you actually never lose things. In Notion, I'm always worried if somebody worked on my document. I mean, when I change something inside Notion, and I switch this page, I have no undo button there. So this is something that worries me all the time. Yes, I can go back and switch back versions and things like that. But you mentioned Git, and I think that's a completely different approach there. And I also hope that these things will become more popular. And also people teach how to do this. It's one of my sayings there on Twitter as well, that we have to change our mindset, that we actually start leveraging the digital world instead of just living in it. Yeah, very good talk here. So thanks a lot for all you shared. And it seems we have a common mindset here when it comes to these things. So really excited to stay with Todoist. And anything you want to share with my community before we close the interview?
I mean, like we are very passionate about the space. We also love that, we get a lot of love from our users as well. And, that's in the end, that's the most maybe critical part is making something that actually people love to use. So for all the people that are using Todoist, thank you for using it and for sticking with us. Yeah, and I think we will have some incredible stuff coming up. Maybe not new features, but more refinement and
increasing robustness and speed. Okay.
Yeah.
So we will never know when this arrived. It's there, but you don't know. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but honestly, I think
it's appreciated.
The small details matter a lot. Yeah. Having something that's also beautifully designed from the inside matters a lot.
Yeah.
So for us, we also crafts people and really care deeply about the quality of the whole experience, and not only about providing some new feature X.
Yeah.
And I think especially in our field, this productivity space, there's a lot of competition on features, and I think it's very unhealthy. And then you end up with having 1,000 stuff and nobody can figure out to use the software in the end.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I think we should do a follow-up at some point because we didn't even scratch the surface when it comes to other tools like Coda and so on. I feel like that there's a lot we can rant about. No, we discuss from an objective perspective, obviously, about these things. So Amir, thank you very much for being on the show, and it was an exciting talk. And I wish you a good time. I think we see us next time.
Well, Tom, thank you for having me here. I appreciate it.
All right. I think this interview was very polarizing, isn't it? Let me know in the comments below. Cannot wait to get your feedback on that and your point of view. I know that many of you using Notion for everything in their life, they manage with Notion, and I absolutely understand this. Yeah, there are certainly use cases where you can do this. I'm coming more from a team manager and project manager perspective, where I really want to be efficient when I want to get these things done. And as I also mentioned in the interview, I'm still using Notion as my knowledge management system because I love connecting the dots inside my databases. I really hope that with the API they're working on, that I finally can start connecting the dots between ClickUp and Notion and eventually Todoist. So if you don't want to miss the next interview, make sure that you subscribe to this YouTube channel, and I'll catch you up next time.